All right, so what we're gonna do today, like I promised, is to go through a couple of questions from the question paper, right? From the question papers, and then see what we can do from there. And if time allows us, I think I'm also gonna open the stuff that we did on the assignment, right? We ran a discussion on the questions from the assignment. I believe we tackled question 1 to 15 or 1 to 10. I can't remember too well, but we will see. But most of the questions just repeated concepts anyway, right? So I understand the next assignment is open. So we're also gonna be preparing to do that assignment soon. I think it should be ready by Sunday or so. But we'll see how well we do in that one. Okay, so this was last semester. No, this is not last semester, it's August. Okay, so this is a more recent paper, August 2023. So this must be the FI concession. All right, very interesting. So we'll do question 1 on the FI concession, but I think I want us to start off on the question that we did last semester, right? And then we jump to the FI concession. So I think I'm going to require a bit of participation from your side, so I understand where we need to maybe spend more time, or where we need
Sorry,
to.
hello.
Yep.
I think I'm in the wrong class. Is this monetary economics?
Monetary economics is at so you're in the wrong class. Yes, monetary economics is data on half 8,
Oh,
around half.
okay. Oh, okay. Sorry. Thank you. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. We actually have got 2 classes squeezed in today. Very not ideal. All right. So this is normally going to be the first question with every examination paper that you are going to write, ECS 3702, and this is worth 25 marks. So this is where you should get all the 25 marks because it relates to the first topics, right? So the first topics are the easiest. So we need to take it easy on those ones and grab as much marks as we can. So question number 1, use the hypothetical information in the table to answer the questions that follow. Right, so we have 2 countries here, Lesotho and South Africa. So the one, okay, so we are dealing with 2 commodities. So our assumptions all the time, it's 2 countries, 2 commodities, right? So it's basically just to simplify everything, right? We don't want to deal with multiple countries. Just want to deal with a hypothetical situation where we just have 2 countries in the world and producing 2 commodities. All right, so we've got shoes and we've got blankets. So when you're dealing with these questions, you always want to check what's in the brackets here, right? Because it gives us an indication of what's being described there, the meaning of those numbers. It basically gives the meaning of the numbers that you see in that box. So if it's ton per hour, you're basically saying Lesotho, for instance, is doing 3 tons per hour, 3 tons of shoes per hour, while South Africa is doing 7 tons per hour. And then blankets, you're also dealing with the production per hour. So why I'm specifically looking at this, sometimes they could put it the other way around. Right? They could put it the other way around. Basically describing the same thing, but they can talk about the number of hours that it takes to manufacture a ton in Lesotho and the number of hours it takes to manufacture a ton in South Africa. So it basically gives the same information, but it's the other way around now. So we need to be on the lookout for that there. All right, so in which commodities do Lesotho and South Africa have an absolute advantage and disadvantage? Explain. All right, this is where you come in now. Katleho and Ria, we have just two of you, so
I'm actually not too sure if there's actually, sorry, please hold for just a second.
Has more advantage with blankets and absolute disadvantage with shoes with shoes. While South Africa has absolute advantage with shoes, and then Lesotho has absolute disadvantage with, and South Africa has absolute disadvantage with blankets, because in an hour's time.
sorry. Say again. I missed it. Please start again.
Okay.
Mhm.
Lesotho has an absolute advantage with blankets and absolute disadvantage with shoes. Then South Africa has absolute advantage with shoes and absolute disadvantage with blankets. This is because they have, in an hour's time, Lesotho can produce 8 blankets
Mhm.
and then 3 shoes in an hour. And then South Africa can produce 7 shoes and 4 blankets. So that, which means they can, Lesotho can produce more blankets, and then South Africa can produce more shoes.
Perfect. Well understood. So much.
So sorry, could I please just ask? So, okay, I'm just gonna put this out there that I haven't had much time to really read through. So I think I'm more, I think it might take a bit of time for me to really get into the group. So please pardon me. But I just wanted to understand. So then, if a country has a higher number of, tons produced within an hour, then automatically that puts them at an advantage.
Absolute. We have two. We
Absolute.
have comparative advantage, and
Okay.
we also have absolute advantage. So there are
Okay.
two advantages, but then we will proceed and see down there what will be the thing. Let's just carry on and see what's going on down there. Now we're
All
only
right.
on this. It's based
Okay.
on, it's under unit 1.
Okay.
Um, after the mercantilist view on
Okay.
trade. After that, you go
Okay.
straight to trade based on absolute advantage.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Okay. Thank
All
you.
right. All right. Thank you. Okay. So what we are picking up from this now is we are just looking at sheer numbers here. So if a country is basically producing more per hour, we say it has got an absolute advantage. Then if it's producing
Okay.
less, it has an absolute disadvantage.
Okay.
So it means it's important that when we are describing this here, okay, it's important to right. So sorry about that. That uh, big pause there. I was getting
No
anything.
problem. No problem.
All right. So it's important now for us to get all the 4 marks here. They want us to talk about the absolute advantage and disadvantage and to explain why a country has an advantage and the other one has a disadvantage. or
Okay.
vice versa. So which means here, when we talk of Lesotho having an absolute advantage, talking about that 8 there, we are compared, it has an advantage. Why? Because South Africa has 4. So it's important that we mention that the advantage is there, because while Lesotho can produce 8 per hour, South Africa only does 4 per hour. So that's where the
Okay.
advantage is. So which means South Africa has a disadvantage because they are producing less Lesotho. And then
Mm.
with Lesotho is doing 3 while South Africa is doing 7. So we are
Mm.
comparing between those two. So we need to point that out there. So with this one, always make sure that you get all your 4 marks, right? Always make sure that you get your 4 marks on that one,
Okay.
right? And then from your answer in 1, explain whether trade is possible and the pattern of trade according to the theory of absolute advantage. So these questions come the same way all the time. What do you think about this? So just to give you a background on this theory, I think we discussed it last week, right, when we were doing a revision on the assignment. So we're saying this in particular was by Adam Smith, which came in response to mercantilism, right? We'll also talk about it as we go on. So Adam Smith came up with this whole theory of absolute advantage. So you are saying, in order for countries to engage in beneficial trade, one country must have an absolute advantage in the production of one commodity, while the other country has an absolute disadvantage in that commodity, and then vice versa. And then under those circumstances, then countries can engage in beneficial trade, right? So I think you'll recall, if you have checked the video, we're talking about trade being a non-zero sum game, according to Adam Smith, that both parties need to gain in trade. Now the question, so this is now a follow-up question. So question number 1 needs you to establish now who has an absolute advantage, and then who has an absolute advantage in the match commodities. And then the follow-up question is, based on that answer, is trade possible? Then you say yes or no. And then if it's possible, then what would be the pattern of trade? So in other words, who's going to be trading in what and who's going to be trading in what? So we need you to talk about, in this context, we want you to identify the areas of specialty, which country, which commodity a certain country is going to specialize in, and which commodity other countries going to specialize in. Over to you.
Okay, so I would assume that South Africa would have possibility or an advantage in terms of the possibility of trade whenever it comes to shoes, and then with Lesotho, it would have the possibility of trade when it comes to blankets.
All right. So which means, first of all, yes, trade is possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so South Africa should specialize in what? In shoes,
Yeah.
and trade their shoes for what? For blankets, ne? And exchange their shoes for blankets, because they're going to specialize in blankets. Perfect, that's correct. So which means that's the pattern of trade. That's basically the pattern of trade. Lesotho is going to specialize in blankets and then exchange the blanket, while South Africa is specializing in shoes, and then they can trade with each other. So which means Lesotho is going to be exchanging their blankets for shoes, right? While South Africa is exchanging their shoes for blankets. That's the pattern of trade, right? Okay, let's see what the next question is. Compute and indicate the commodity of each nation's comparative advantage and disadvantage. No marks will be awarded if you do not show all your working. So this is the part now where we start doing some working, but it's only 6 marks, so we are still not yet complaining. All right, so I'm gonna put up the information there on an Excel spreadsheet so we can do our calculations easy, you know. So take note that these calculations are all gonna be the same, right? They are all gonna be the same. So the same way that we calculate it today will be the same way that you would have to calculate it. They just change the figures there, nothing else. So once you get it
Okay.
today, you'll always get it all the time. And we would likely have this again in the assignments. Right? It's strange that this module suddenly has a lot of assignments. I almost suspected that there was not going to be an exam in that semester because of the number of assignments that they give. It's really a lot of them. Right. I think I've copied this. Let me share the screen. Right. I think this is what we have there. So output per hour, and then we have Lesotho and we have SA. So this is what we have. All right. So in terms of get to the question. So we are coming here. Compute and indicate the commodity of each nation's comparative advantage and disadvantage. So in terms of comparative advantage, now we take into consideration opportunity cost. Right? We want to take into consideration opportunity cost. So what is opportunity cost? We are basically looking at what is foregone when you're manufacturing. For instance, we've got two options here. Right? Opportunity cost always refers to a situation where you have an option and then you need to give up one option for the other. So that speaks of opportunity cost. So we are going to assess this in Lesotho, right? We're going to assess this in Lesotho. So in Lesotho, we want to do the opportunity cost of doing shoes in Lesotho, right? So Lesotho, all right. We're going to start it off there. So this is how we do it. So we want to start off with shoes. So we'll say 3S. So this is in Lesotho, so we are looking at it on the column like that. So 3S is equal to 8B. So this is what happens there in that country. 3S is equal to 8B. So we divide both sides by 3. So it's going to be 3 divided by 3S there is equal to 8 divided by 3. So we are basically dividing both sides by 3. Why? Because we want to remain with S there, because we want to know what the value of shoes, of one shoe or one ton of shoe is in terms of blankets. So hence we are dividing by 3 so that we remain with 1S is equal to something there. So which means what we're going to remain with there, 3 divided by 3 is 1 is equal to, then we can do the calculation there, 8 divided by 3. So that's going to be 2 point, let's make it 2.27. Oh, sorry, 2.67. All right. There you go. So by interpretation, what this means is one shoe, okay, sorry, this has to be B there. The cost of producing one shoe in Lesotho is 2.67 blankets. 1 ton of shoe is equal to 2.67 blankets. That's the interpretation there. So you are simply dividing, right? Then while we are still in Lesotho, let's find the cost of one blanket, right? So to find the cost of one blanket, it's going to be 8B is equal to, now we are starting with S because we want, sorry, now we are starting with B because we want 1B, right? We want to find the cost of one blanket. So 8 divided by 8, the B remains there, and then there you're going to have 3 divided by 8, S, right? So once we are done dividing there, you're gonna have 1b is equal to, you come down here, 3 divided by 8, it's 0.38. Let's make it 0.38. Okay. 0.38 S. Right, let me cancel that there. So which means the cost of producing one blanket is 0.38 S. Right. So now by analysis, just look for one which is cheap. Right. So in other words, the one which gives the smallest cost. So which means if 1b is giving you the smallest cost, like in this case, then this is where they have a comparative advantage. Right? It is cheap. But of course, in order for you to completely come up with a very good conclusion there, you want to do also for South Africa. So let's put South Africa on the side there. All right, so South Africa, we can start with shoes. So we can match these. So it's going to be 7S. So 7S is going to be equal to what? It's going to be equal to 4B, right? So we are pretty much doing it the same way. Then you are dividing 7 by 7 there, because they said we need to show our workings. So this is why we are going through all this whole process. And then 4 divided by 7, B, right there. So what remains here is going to be 1S equal to, so here we can do the calculation on the side. It's going to be 4 divided by 7. So that's going to be 0.57. 0.57B. All right. And then now we are doing B. We start off with 4B is equal to 7S. Now we are dividing by 4. Right. S. All right. So you do that. Right. 4 divided by 4 is equal to 7 divided by 4 S. Right. So what you have here remaining is 1S, exactly where we want this to be. Right. So what is 7 divided by 4? It's 4 July. See now where Excel starts getting messed up. 7 divided by 4. So it's 1.75.
1.7.
All right. So based on this now, we can now draw our conclusion. So you can see that if you look at the cost of manufacturing shoes in Lesotho and the cost of manufacturing shoes in South Africa, it's cheaper in South Africa because there it only costs 0.57, while there it costs 2.7. So it's expensive in Lesotho. And if you look at blankets, the cost of one blanket here is 0.38, while it's 1.75, 75 what? 75S here. So which means it's cheaper to manufacture blankets in Lesotho than in South Africa. Then this is where now we draw our conclusions. So based on this now, you can then start off and say, all right, the opportunity cost, okay, maybe we can, they want us to do what? The comparative advantage. Let me go back to the question so we phrase it correctly. Compute and indicate the commodity of each nation's comparative advantage and comparative disadvantage, right? So this is how I would write it, right? Let's say South Africa has a comparative advantage. My spellings, right? In the production so we agree that it's in the production of shoes.
Of shoes, yeah.
Yes. Because they can produce shoes at a lower opportunity cost than Lesotho, right? How do we know so? Then we can then say the opportunity cost of producing shoes in SA is 0.57 B, while in Lesotho it is 2.67 B, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hence, Lesotho has a comparative disadvantage, right? So I know you can probably phrase this a lot better than this, but
Yeah.
most importantly, you need to, however you phrase it, you need to make sure that you have answered the question. First of all, who has the comparative advantage in what again, right? So, as we have already pointed out, South Africa has a comparative advantage in the production of shoes, right? Why? Because they can produce shoes at a lower opportunity cost. So, if we wanted to phrase it differently, South Africa has a comparative advantage in the production of shoes, while Lesotho has a comparative disadvantage in the production of, right? And then you can go on to say this is because South Africa can produce shoes at a lower opportunity than Lesotho. Then you can get all the marks there. Right. Then on the other one, we are starting with Lesotho now. We are dealing with Lesotho. Lesotho has a comparative advantage. Now it's an advantage. Advantage in the what? In the production of blankets. Let me phrase it the way I said it. In the production of blankets, while South Africa, I'm tired of typing, is a comparative disadvantage in the production of blankets. This is because Lesotho can produce blankets at a lower opportunity cost. Then we can decide to put it in brackets, right? 1B is equal to 0.38 S than South Africa. Then we can put South Africa's results here. 1S is equal to 1.75. Okay, 1B, sorry. So I didn't write it correctly up here, but we will sort it out. I hope I'm going through all this trouble for you to understand this one better.
No,
Right,
definitely.
So you see now, no matter how you put this, you make sure that you put your points across. Make sure that you have answered the questions. So that's, you basically get all your 6 marks there. And then again, back to the theory, why do we have a theory of comparative advantage when we already have a theory of absolute advantage? So it's because in terms of the absolute advantage, trade is only possible when one country has an absolute advantage and the other country is an absolute disadvantage. So what does that mean? When we talk of absolute advantage, we are referring to the efficiency in production. So one country has to be more efficient in the production of a commodity, while the other is inefficient in the production of that commodity. So under those circumstances, under those circumstances of absolute advantage, then trade is possible according to the theory by Adam Smith.
Is
But
it the same? If I may ask, sorry, is it
yeah,
like the zero-sum game? It's when one country wins at the expense of the other, right?
yes.
And then what's this? The theory of Adam Smith, based on Adam Smith. Can you please elaborate on that? Because I'm lost
Okay.
between the two.
Okay, let's differentiate between the two. So whenever you think of a zero-sum game, that one was for mercantilists. Ne? So under those ones, saying every time there is trade, one person is losing and the other person is gaining. So hence it's a zero-sum game, it's a minus for the other one and it's a plus for the other one. So if you add a minus and a plus, you get to zero. Ne?
Okay.
So under those circumstances, that's the zero-sum game. So this is the situation.
And then the autarky prizes, what are those under absolute advantage?
Autarky prices, these are the autarky prices. It's the prices without international trade, so it's the local prices, in other words. I'm gonna show
Their
that
price.
to you now. This
Okay.
is the autarky price. These ones here.
Okay. It's the prices of producing. It's the same of
In
buying
that country.
material. Let's say I'm buying a material to make a ballpoint. So for the ink and everything is the autarky price.
Not exactly, because now we are dealing with it in terms of opportunity cost. So we look at the price of a commodity in terms of the other commodity. So it's the local exchange rate.
The autarky price, the autarky price.
Yes, it's the local exchange,
Okay.
exchange rate, or whatever you wanna call it. But basically, it's the price of one commodity of another, but within the country. For instance, the autarky price here of 1 ton of shoe gonna be what? 2.7,
Okay.
2.67, sorry. So it's basically the price of that shoe or the price of that blanket in Lesotho. So when we talk of autarky, we are basically talking of a situation without trade. Right.
Okay.
So which is
In
basically
regard to the absolute advantage, how does labor productivity feature in?
How does what, sorry?
The labor
Labor
productivity as the determined factor.
It's because, so where it comes in is this issue here. Per hour, you see,
Okay.
this is all labor. So we're saying the laborers in Lesotho can produce 3 tons per hour, while the laborers in South Africa can produce what? 7 tons.
And then
So that's
going
the,
to the comparative advantage introduced by David Rickard, he didn't consider the same principle.
he did.
He did. He considered it. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Only
It was
labor.
actually based on labor theory of value. There were a lot of considerations that he put up. One of those was the labor theory of value, which
And
is
then what
this
about,
here.
and then the opportunity cost?
Then the opportunity cost came a little bit late, because
Okay.
people now, the reason why the labor theory of value, we couldn't exactly agree with the labor theory of value is because in order for you to produce shoes, you don't just need labor. you also need machines. See? So because labor is not the only factor in the production process of shoes, many other
Oh,
things that you so which means
so
now
Ricardo,
yeah.
Smith introduced only labor, while Ricardo put in other things that matters, like to make the production work, like introducing the machinery and stuff, or the opportunity cost of making shoes instead of making blanket.
In reality, even Ricardo based on the labor theory of value. It's the other guy, I forget his name, who came after Ricardo to explain the theory of comparative advantage using the theory of opportunity cost. So here we teach them as the same thing, but they are not exactly the same thing.
Mr. Hume or Hume, or how do you pronounce the name?
I can't remember the person's name. But what happens is they are not exactly the same thing. The theory of comparative advantage and the theory of opportunity cost, they both explain the same thing. Actually, the theory of opportunity cost explains the theory of comparative advantage. But the theory of comparative advantage was based on, that's why you see on most questions, you will always get something per hour, something per hour. It's all because it's the labor theory of value. They are saying the value of a commodity is mostly based on the amount of labor that you put in that commodity. So that is what we refer to as the labor theory of value. So that is what, but here we just, but here we just do absolute advantage, and then from there, when we talk of comparative advantage, we explain it opportunity cost.
Will we do it in the group, or we wait for class next week?
This is the one. Wait, it's the one that we're doing. This is it here.
I wanted to ask about equal advantage. How does it feature in compared to? Okay, let's start here. If two countries produce and exchange the surplus of goods, what will happen?
If they in what sense? If they produce and
exchange the surplus of goods, let's say South Africa, as much as they have more shoes, and then they produce more per hour, then exchange it with Lesotho, and Lesotho give them blankets. While what will be the effect on the exchange?
On the exchange in terms of
Comparative
or
advantage.
comparative.
Yes.
All right, wait, maybe let me explain it this way also, because there's something that I also wanted to clarify leading to the comparative advantage.
Okay.
Sometimes there will be situations where, let's say, SA is producing, using the same example here, let's just say SA is producing 25 shoes, yes, and then let's just say they're producing 15 there, right? And then these ones here, let's just say they are producing 5 shoes. This one is what is less, and they are producing 10 blankets. So where David Ricardo came in was in situations like this, because if you assess this in terms of theory of absolute advantage, South Africa has an advantage in the production of both of these. You see, because South Africa does 25, while Lesotho does 5. Then if you come down again, South Africa does 15, while Lesotho does 10. You see, your answer for that part would be trade is not possible under the theory of absolute advantage, because for that theory to work, one country must have an absolute advantage, right? While the other country
has the absolute disadvantage.
Yes. So if one country is more efficient in the production of both commodities, then it means that it does not gain from trade. This is according to, because why trade?
So we don't have to trade.
No, you don't have to trade. But that's according to absolute advantage, because you are better than them, right? You produce
Okay.
15 while they produce 10. You produce 25 while they produce 5 there. So just don't trade. So which is where now David Ricardo came in and said no, which is now the theory of comparative advantage. It says you can trade as long as you have assessed the opportunity cost. So of which the opportunity cost there will be, if you do the divisions there it's gonna be 1:2, no? 1:2, and there 1 is gonna be, let's see, 25 divided by 15, so 1.6. So which means you can already see, given therefore, you can see that SA can produce, right? In order for SA to produce one, this is blankets at the bottom, right? So in order for SA to produce one blanket, how much do they lose? They basically lose 1.6 something. Starting with Lesotho, if you do the divisions, one blanket is gonna be 0.5, right? So which means Lesotho should concentrate in the production of blankets because the opportunity cost is lower there. So I think the easier way to do this would have been to do a 10 divided by 10 there, and then a 5 divided by 10. That's what you'll be showing on the workings there. Then you can conclude based on these now that it's cheaper for less to blanket. So this is in terms of opportunity cost now. And then with SA, it's slightly more expensive. So the thing is, with theory of comparative advantage or opportunity cost, if one country, like for instance, if you can establish that Lesotho has a comparative advantage in the production of blankets, it always follows that SA has a comparative advantage in the other commodity, which is shoes. So it's always the case like that. So whenever you find yourself getting confused with calculations, just do one calculation, and then for the other calculation, make sure that the result must always give you something that is opposite to that one. You can't exactly have a comparative advantage in both of those commodities. You see, at least in what we do here. So which is why this guy came in anyway, David Ricardo. But the way he explained it was not using the theory of opportunity cost. So he was basically looking at where you have the highest comparative, where you have the highest absolute advantage. You see? So in other words, fine, you have an absolute advantage in both of the commodities, but where do you have the highest absolute advantage? That's how he explained it. But I don't think our lecturers want it that way. They simply want you to go straight to the other one, the theory of opportunity cost. All right, and then where are we now? And then from your answer in 2, explain whether trade is possible and the pattern of trade. So the pattern of trade, we are simply saying now, the country needs to special. So yes, trade is possible. And then in terms of the pattern of trade, now we are saying who should specialize in what, right? So what should they specialize in and export, and what should they import instead? So you basically go back to your conclusions there. So you say South Africa is a comparative advantage in the production of shoes. So which means South Africa should specialize in the production of shoes and export them to Lesotho, right? While importing blankets. And then Lesotho should specialize in the production of blankets while they import shoes. Then you get your 3 marks there. You see, you're getting closer and closer to 25. All right, let's have a look at it. You see now, this is the situation that we're describing, where Lesotho has an absolute advantage in the production of both of these commodities. You see, and then here, South Africa has an absolute disadvantage in the production of both of those commodities, but we have already done that anyway. So what would work here, obviously, would be the theory of comparative advantage if trade is going to take place. But in terms of absolute advantage, you can't trade, right? You just can't trade. So if Lesotho exchanges 600 tons of blankets for 600 tons of shoes, how many tons of shoes does Lesotho gain? All right. So Lesotho is giving up. So this one is very easy. Let's analyze it, right? Lesotho is giving up 600 tons of blankets, these 600 here. Then in exchange, they are getting 600 shoes, right? So how much do they gain? So obviously, in terms of shoes, how many tons of shoes do they gain? So they could have said, how much is Lesotho gaining in terms of shoes? So you're looking at the number of shoes that Lesotho is getting versus the number of shoes that they could have manufactured. So in terms of Otake prices now, this is the Otake price. So 600 blankets is equal to 400 shoes. So if they are giving up 600 blankets and they are getting 600 shoes instead of 400, so the gain is going to be the difference there, 600 minus 400. That one is very easy, very, 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 very easy. So that's the gain. So I'm going to repeat it again. So this is the 600 there. So they are giving up this 600 to get 600 shoes. So they are receiving 600 shoes, right? In terms of Otake prices, right? 600 shoes only gives, sorry, 600 blankets only gives them 400 shoes, but they are instead getting 600 shoes. So which means they are gaining the difference between the 600 that they are getting from South Africa and the 400 that they could have manufactured. So it's a total gain of 200 shoes there.
And just to find out, so if they lose the 600 blankets, does that mean they now have 0 blankets that they are producing, or does that number still stay there?
It still stays there. So here we are
Okay.
simply analyzing it in terms of prices there, not in
Okay.
terms of physical movement of goods. So we're
Okay.
basically saying, what is your gain if you're going to exchange it in this ratio?
Okay.
All right. So now they have gained 200 shoes. So we're going to do a lot of these questions. Next time, we are going to start off here again, but on a different question paper. We'll make sure that we've got all these things covered. All right. And then how many hours does Lesotho save? So this is also a build up from this question, if you notice. So if they've gained 600 shoes in place of 400, so which means they've basically the net gain there is 200 shoes. So how much have they saved in terms of hours? So they are basically asking you, how much is 200 shoes worth in Lesotho? So you first of all calculate on A, you get your 200 shoes, and then B, they're basically saying how much hours is your 200 shoes worth. Then you come here, you can already observe that 1 hour is 400. So which means 200 is going to be half an hour. So that's going to be 30 minutes. So they've basically saved half an hour. Then you get your 2 marks. How many shoes does South Africa gain? All right. Now this is where it gets interesting now. So Lesotho has exchanged 600 blankets for 600 tons of shoes, right? So we need to take these shoes now. Oh, okay. I think my other device is out now. Okay, let me just reshare the screen. Sorry. We are almost done anyway. We are gonna finish with this. I wanna give you a trick, an easy trick on how to solve these questions. Right. Let me just wait for it to share. It says here I've got an unstable connection. All right, let me try again. Okay, while we wait for it. So I was saying the first thing to do now, if you're gonna be dealing with this partner where we are dealing with South Africa, right? There we go. We got it. We need to equalize these now. So, because in order for South Africa to export 600 tons of shoes to Lesotho, they must first of all manufacture that 600 tons. So we are going to put it up in Otaki prices. So I'm gonna put it up on Excel there quickly. I think I had done. All right, I'm gonna use the old thing. I'm just gonna share it now. Let me just put down the numbers so we don't forget. 100 and 200. All right. I'm just gonna share that now. All right, there we go. We should be going to the Excel sheets anytime now. All right, there you go. So I put up 600 there, 400, and then 100 and 200. So now we want to find out how much does SA gain in terms of shoes. Right? So which means first of all, SA needs to manufacture. Let me put this in gray. Let me put it in gray there. SA is gonna have to manufacture 600 shoes, né? In order for them to conclude that exchange. So if they are doing 600 shoes in the ratio of 1:2, how much blankets is that 600? Is those 600 shoes worth? Then what are you basically doing? First of all, what Ria was talking about, the Otaki price. So the Otaki price is 1:2 there. Ne? You can see that 100 and 200 gives you 1:2. So which means whatever number you put there, you need to maintain that ratio. So it's gonna be double of that. So it's gonna be 1,200.
1,200.
Perfect. Now let's see what the story is there. So given now that we are exchanging 600 tons, right? Exchanging those 600 tons of Lesotho exchanges 600 blankets for, okay, sorry, I actually did it the other way around. I'm gonna correct that now. Lesotho exchanges 600 tons of blankets for 600 tons of shoes, right? For 600 tons of shoes. Then the question down there is, how many shoes does South Africa gain? All right, perfect. So we go back to our calculation there. So South Africa is basically manufactured 600 tons of shoes, right? And then exchange those shoes for blankets, right? I believe. Let me just recheck that. I think I'm losing it a little bit. Yeah, Lesotho exchanged 600 tons of blankets. Perfect. Yes, South Africa has exchanged 600 tons of shoes. So South Africa is getting blankets for shoes, right? South Africa is getting blankets for shoes. But in that ratio now, we are receiving blankets. So we are receiving how many blankets? We are receiving 600 tons of whatever, 600 tons of blankets, right? So this is the right way to do it. Sorry about this one here, right? Sorry about this one. The right way to do it, why it's a little bit different now, is because remember we are receiving blankets, right? But we need to find our value in terms of shoes. So we therefore put down our blankets there, right? We basically put down our blanket there. So in terms of the Otaki prices now, if we're getting 600 blankets, 600 blankets are basically worth how many shoes? 300 shoes. They are basically worth 300 shoes given in that ratio there, right? So what's gonna be gain there? So we are getting 600, but we could have done 300, right? So it's an exchange of 600 is to 300. So which is gonna be the difference between 300 and 600. So the gain is only going to be 300 shoes. That's the gain there. Just to repeat myself, maybe this is going to confuse. Let me take this one out and put the 600 there. So this is what we are getting. Right? What did we manufacture? Let me put it in red. We manufactured 600, right? And we received how many? 600 blankets. How much is 600 blankets worth based on this ratio? It's going to be worth 300. So the gain is going to be what we manufactured and what we got back. So it's going to be 300. 300 is the gain.
Okay, that makes sense.
Makes a bit of sense now.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see what's, so then the last part again, which is very common. What is the range of mutually beneficial trade, and explain how you arrived at your answer? Okay, so this one is the simplest. Again, this is where we want to equalize these ones, right? We want to equalize those ones. So which means we'll have 600 in the middle, right? So we start off with our sign. All right, let's start off with 400. And then we put our 600 there in the middle. So this is the autarky price. So it should always be, it can't go below 400, right? It can't go below 400. So let's say it's 400 blankets is to 600 shoes, all right? So in terms of autarky price, again, 600, 600 tons of shoes in SA is worth how much blankets? It's the price of, it's the
200.
ratio of 1:2. So it's gonna be 2 times 600, yeah? The way in which we're going to do it in the first one. So it's gonna be 1,200. So this is the autarky, this is the range. So which means the price of 600 tons of shoes should be between 400 blankets and 1.2. Anything beyond that is not acceptable. So how you go about getting your answer, you first equalize. You first of all find the autarky price of shoes in Lesotho. So it's easier to use 600, right? So the price of shoes in Lesotho is 600. 600 tons of shoes. Sorry, the price of 600 tons of shoes in Lesotho is 400 there. Then the big question is, what would be the price of 600 tons of shoes in SA? So given the ratio of 1:2, so if your shoes is 600, then your blankets have to be double of that, which is 1.2. So that's how you arrive at that answer there.
Okay.
So your explanation is you make an assessment of the autarky prices. In Lesotho, the price of 600 tons of shoes is 400 blankets. So the price should not go below that. And then in South Africa, the price of 600 tons of shoes is going to be 1.2 blankets. So it should not also go above that. So that's where you get your range there. All right. So next time we are starting off with this other one, right? Because I noticed the one that was done now is slightly different. So on this one, which we are going to be doing next time, we need to first do a table. Then after we do a table, then the product of absolute advantage and disadvantage, and explain how we got to that conclusion. Then opportunity cost, where we show workings again, that's going to be another 6 marks. And then explain whether trade is possible under absolute advantage and under comparative advantage. And then we explain the pattern of trade. All right. And then B was, okay, we're supposed to use that table. Then how much does Ivory Coast gain in terms of cocoa beans? So it's still the same thing that we're doing. So in conclusion, sometimes where it gets tricky, like if you look at in SA here, they were asking us how much does SA gain in terms of shoes. You see, that's what they were basically asking us. So that's where it becomes a little bit twisted. You see, but for the situation, Lesotho's situation was straightforward. How much are they gaining in terms of blankets? It's easy because we know they got 600 blankets and they could have manufactured 400, so they gained 200. What about these ones who are giving up those shoes and then they say, how much are they gaining in terms of shoes? So that's why we need to start at the bottom here. Right, but anyway, I think we are done for tonight. Enjoy the rest of your evening until we meet next time.
Thank you so much. This was very, very, very helpful. As much as I haven't had time to really go through some material, I think it's crazy that I understand pretty much everything that you've taught today. So thank you so much.
You are welcome. Perfect.
All right. And I also just wanted to find out, do you have the memo for the first assignment for this module?
Yes, I think no. The only
No,
one
the
that I
one you
have
sent me was for that other assignment. I think it was 2602. I think that's the one you shared with me.
is it. All
Mm,
right. No, I'll check. I'll
okay.
recheck.